Today, we're going to be taking a look at how to find profitable CS2 trade-ups with the newest trade-up system and how the new formula has changed trade-ups forever. Just over 1 week ago, Valve released an update with 3 simple lines that changed contracts and how they work in CS2. It also added the ability to trade up 5 covert items to a knife or gloves. Because of this update, the way trade-ups were calculated have now changed in 2 separate ways. The first and easiest way to understand is simply the odds to profit. The change with odds to profit did make some high-risk trade-ups easier to hit those profitable outcomes. As we can see here prior to this update, the trade-up on screen, we could have hit 2 profitable outcomes with both at a 2.63% chance odds to profit. The overall odds to profit here was a 5.26%. However, when we take a look at this exact same trade-up after the CS2 update, with the same 2 outcomes being profitable, we now have an odds to profit of 10%. We can see each of the 2 profitable skins now has a 5% compared to that 2% that we previously had. The way that the new trade-up outcomes are calculated are based on the input skins you are using from each collection. For example, here on the left-hand side, we have 9 items from the Nuke collection and 1 item from the Rising Sun collection. Because of this, we'll have a 90% chance to hit the Nuke collection and a 10% chance to hit the Rising Sun collection. This will be divided based on the outcomes from that same collection. What I mean by this is you have 2 items from the Rising Sun collection as an outcome. They will be splitting that 10%, so 5% each. If we take out 2 of these Nuke collections and add in 2 more Rising Sun collections, we now have a 30% chance to hit that collection that we do want for a profit. This video was sponsored by Skinland. It is the best time to buy skins while markets are at their lowest. Skinland offers the best deals and has the largest selection of skins to choose from. Despite Valve's trade reversal update, thanks to Skinland's new payout system, you can receive instant payouts right after you complete your trade. On top of the instant payouts, they're also offering you a free $10 on your first sale of $100. Skinland also has a ton of different payment methods available. Check out Skinland today with the link in the description, and don't forget to use code Claude for a free $10. Now that we've covered the easy to understand method that did change, we now have to cover how the new average float system works and why some trade-ups are no longer profitable that were previously profitable prior to this update. Taking a look at an example on the screen here, this trade-up was 100% chance prior to the CS2 update. It consisted of 2 items from the Boreal collection, both being profitable in minimal wear condition. We can see here, prior to this update, the average float of our items was a 0.199. Prior to this update, the game would simply take your 10 input skins, add up the float on each item, and divide it by the 10 to find your average float. If you use the same float on each item, for example right here, the Mac 10 Poplar Thicket, we used a 0.199 on every item, which made the average float 0.199. The floats on the outcomes would then be determined by their float caps using the equation shown on screen. Their float would equal the maximum float minus the minimum float of that item times the average float of the trade-up that you are attempting plus the minimum float of the input skin. For example, taking a look at the outcome prior to this update, the M4A4 Sheet Lightning in minimal wear condition would have came out at a 0.14925 float. The first thing we would have needed for this equation was the overall float caps of this item, the M4A4 Sheet Lightning. When we take a look here, the wear range is a 0.00 to a 0.75. Because of this, we take the max float, which is the 0.75 that we did just show, minusing the minimum float of 0, which we also did just show on the previous chart. We would times that by the average float of the trade-up, which we had 10 Mac 10 Poplar Thickets at a 0.199, which was the average, and we would add that to the minimum of 0 for that item. To complete this equation, we would multiply the 0.75 times 0.199 to get our float of the Sheet Lightning at a 0.14925, which we did previously show. If we take a look now at the exact same trade-up after the CS2 update, once again we have 10 Mac 10 Poplar Thickets, field tested condition at a 0.199 float. However, we can see there's now an adjusted average float of a 0.29264. Because of the new average adjusted float, when we take a look at the outcomes here, they are no longer in minimal wear or profitable. We now get 2 field tested outcomes that both are at a loss. The way that floats on outcomes are now determined is using the new equation for CS2 trade-ups as shown on screen. This consists of the maximum float minus the minimum float, timesing that by the average float inputs, minusing the minimum float on the input, dividing that by the maximum float on the input, minusing the minimum float on the input. In order to find the sheet lightning float as the outcome, we're taking that maximum float outcome, which is 0.75. We did previously show that, and this did not change with the CS2 update. Once again, minusing that minimum float of 0. So far, everything will be the exact same from the prior update. However, where it changes is right here in the next calculation, which is where we find the adjusted average float. We can take our average float currently of the 0.199. This is what it was previous to the update. However, we're going to be dividing that by 0.68. The way that we determine this is the input skin that we are using. What I mean by this is, since we're using the Mac 10 Poplar Thicket, we now also have to look at the float range of the input skin. As we can see here, the wear range on the Mac 10 will be a 0.0 to a 0.68. Now that we know the float range on that Mac 10 Poplar Thicket is a 0.68, we will divide that from the 0.199. Once we complete this calculation, we are left with a 0.292647058. When we take a look back at the outcomes of this trade up, we can see here in the top left corner, the average adjusted float is that same number at a 0.292647058. And now that we have that average adjusted float, we can times that by the 0.75, which was that maximum float on the sheet lightning, which means the outcome that we will get will be at a 0.21948529. And once again, when we look back at the trade up here, we can see the M4A4 sheet lightning is the exact same float that we did just calculate. Once again, you can do the exact same calculation using the other item, which is the Glock 18. You'll have to double check the mins and max floats on this item and repeat the same calculation we did just use. Now that we understand how the average adjusted float works, let's take a look at a few examples using it in trade-ups. If we search up something from the Fracture collection, this is a trade-up we've previously done on the channel, which was no risk. Let's take a look at something like the Galil AR connection. We can see the min is a 0 to a maximum of a 0.08. We would do this trade up with a 0.09 float previously on this channel. If we add in 10 of these items, we can see we have 1 outcome in factory new and 2 in minimal wear, and the average adjusted float is now a 0.1125. However, if we do this exact same trade up, deleting out the Galil AR connection, when we look at the Fracture collection once again, with something like the Tech 9 Brother, we can see here the minimum to maximum is a 0 to 1 with the exact same float of a 0.09. We add in 10 of these items, we can see here there's no average adjusted float since the max is 0 to 1, and from this we can see it's a no risk trade up with 100% chance odds to profit. All 3 outcomes are now in factory new. A majority of the skins that you're going to want to use for trade ups will be in that 0 to 1 float range. This will not adjust the average float. However, you can take advantage of this new float system using a few different skins in CS2. For example, if we go to the industrial grades and we search something like the Savannah Halftone, when we take a look at this skin here in field tested condition, we can see the minimum float is actually a 0.25 compared to a lot of items which are a 0.0. Because of this, if we use it at a 0.3 float and we add in 10 of these items, we can see here the average float is actually adjusted to a 0.1 compared to other trade ups where it does increase the average float. We can see it decreased it here, making this a 75% chance odds to profit, using 10 field tested skins to get items in factory new condition. I will be giving away this Huntsman Knife Marble Fade in factory new condition when we hit 50,000 subscribers. All you need to do to enter this giveaway, subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment down below, and make sure your trade link or Steam ID are in the description of your YouTube channel. I will also be giving away this Mac 10 Derailment in minimal wear condition when this video hits 350 likes. All you need to do to enter the giveaway, drop a like on the video, comment down below what your thoughts on the new CS2 trade-up system are, and if you want a chance at more giveaways, join the Discord linked in the description. Now that minimum and maximum floats on the input skins has a major impact on the overall outcomes of the trade-up, I would highly recommend only looking for trade-ups with items using that 0 to 1 float range, or any item that has over a 0 minimum float. This will help you guys find more profitable CS2 trade-ups with the new formulas that do calculate trade-ups. I'll be spending many hours in order to find the best trade-ups to show you guys on this channel and continue to put out CS2 trade-up videos. If you enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.